Would you look at that? It's
April
already. What does that mean, you ask? Well, it means that spring is here, for one. Oh, it also means that a new Amnesia game is going to be released soon enough. And to celebrate that, I've thought that it'd be pretty neat to talk a bit about Amnesia and just generally about frictional games. From the first one in 2006, all the way to right here, right now, 13 years later. Well, without any further ado, because I don't have a witty way to transition, let's just start. Oh yeah, side note. This video is gonna end up being a two-parter because, class, exams. I got responsibilities I must attend to, you know? I hope you understand. I was really excited to pump out this, like, really big video. But, you know, I just don't have the time. Anyways, let's start this video with how Amnesia changed horror. Some years before Amnesia The Dark Descent released, 2006 to be more exact, frictional games were already hard at work on creating their own 3D puzzle horror game, a nameless tech demo. And then a bit later they released Penumbra Overture, which is a game I was already familiar with, because it was the game that kickstarted my short-lived atrocious Twitch/Twitch highlights YouTube career. So yeah, you could say I'm experienced with this franchise. Let's start with the first one. Penumbra Overture is Amnesia's own Wolfenstein, a primitive version of everything the sequel would evolve from. Even the plot is similar, I guess. You're a man investigating his absentee father, and that investigation leads you to a lonely hatch in the midst of the snow, in the middle of nowhere, in Greenland. The only thing this game has that Amnesia wouldn't is a combat system, even if it's the single most clunky gameplay loop of all time, because it was designed to be the last possible resort. But hey, if the hard to use combat pisses you off like it pissed me off back in the day.
Okay, combat should now work, okay. Look at me! I'm a pro!
You can always go into the game files and turn on easy mode, making the combat system less infuriating. Now instead of dragging your weapon of choice to strike, you just need to click. After the moderate success of Overture, the studio came out a year later with its sequel, Black Plague, which is the game that resembles Amnesia the most. The combat has been completely removed, only leaving you with the option of sneaking and trying to hide from the people who are actively hunting you down. To be fair, this also might be the funnest of the Penumbra games. Overture was too drab and maze-like, and the third installment in the trilogy, Requiem, just straight up discarded all of the horror elements and became the world's only gothic puzzle game. And for that very daring artistic move, it flopped tremendously, to the point that a fan-made game that's a mod to Amnesia is seen more as the genuine third entry than the original. Maybe it was the horror elements that made Penumbra what it is, not the puzzles. But their next game would thankfully go back to Lovecraftian monsters and just spooks in general. Amnesia The Dark Descent would release on the 8th of September 2010, and I think it's fair to say that this game certainly didn't flop. Of course, we could attribute a big part of its success to the booming Let's Play scene that was beginning to happen on YouTube at the time. Amnesia The Dark Descent was an extremely influential game on the indie scene, and just with horror games as a whole. I've already discussed this in my Scariest Games video. I'll try not to repeat myself, but I can promise I won't repeat some points. It features a great story where you awake, not remembering anything, almost like you have amnesia. You do, however, remember the fact you've got to take down the Baron of the castle you're in. And as you discover more and more about why you're here, the more and more you embark in this dark descent. The story is pretty cool and very Poe-ish in that sense. Like I said, it's serviceable and good enough. The monsters, or servant of the castle as they're called, are horrifying both in design and implication. I mean, this dude had his lower jaw and throat completely mangled, and this other dude, I mean, just look at him.
I look at this monkey.
And the puzzles slash the gameplay department here isn't exactly complex. You can walk, jump, and even do some more advanced movements like leaning to the sides. And the puzzles are pretty easy most of the time, with the exception of that one elevator puzzle. I swear to God. As far as mechanics go, you've got a sanity meter, which is pretty realistic in this scenario. Looking at walking, breathing, mutilated things is bound to leave you a bit shaken up. And also, I've got to say that having a lamp where you constantly run out of oil is a pretty good way to keep you on your toes without really doing anything. Since the atmospheric drones of the soundtrack alone really make you think that anything can jump out from the shadows and initiate a chase sequence or something. This game was revolutionary in the sense that it brought Lovecraft into the forefront of horror gaming with its extensive use of the fear of the unknown. Games like Afraid of the Dark, Call of Cthulhu, and even Condemned had used it before to a certain extent, but none of these really hit the nail like Amnesia did. As I've already mentioned, this game was a huge hit. The emerging Let's Play scene latched onto it, and creators like PewDiePie, Markiplier, and the Nugget and a Biscuit Man were cranking out videos playing it. And you may ask, once the YouTubers completed the, let's face it, short story the game has, how is it that they managed to still make dozens of videos on the game? Well, Amnesia came with mod support in the form of custom stories, which, as the name implies, are stories made by modders using the game's engine. They're story mods, games within the original game. Basically that Russian nesting doll thing in video game form. There are dozens of these, with some of the really good ones being Amadeus, The Great Work, and Laughing in the Darkness. Due to the game's ludicrous success, Frictional Games did something they had never done before and released a DLC campaign for the game, Amnesia Justine. In this DLC you play as Justine, a sadistic aristocrat who has locked herself in her own made test chamber, where she's locked up 3 different people in death traps and taken an amnesia potion to test her own morality. You learn this through various eerie cylinder phonograph recordings Justine leaves for herself as guides. You also face off against 3 suitors you kindly rejected.
Not what you say.
Your beauty is blinding. Ah! My eyes! What have you done to my eyes? Justine, this isn't funny. You've blinded me.
Ha ha! Can't catch me now.
I'll kill you, you whore!
Which are the only real dangers in this DLC apart from yourself. What made Amnesia good to begin with was the fact that it really made you feel vulnerable. And in this DLC, it's no different. Not only in the way the encounters with the suitors have you scrambling for any semblance of safety, but also with the fact that you've got 1 life throughout the entire thing. Yes, if you die, you go back to the main menu. It's a cool gimmick, even if the stories just saw in 18th century Europe. I'd say this DLC is worth a play, even if it's not on the same level as the base game. And that's the end of the first part. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one. I'm Roth, and you've been you, I guess.